So in problem set 4, we're entering into the world of array lists, and array lists are similar to arrays, except they're different. Arrays, when you declare them, they are fixed in size. So if you create one that's size 5, it's going to stay size 5 for the length of your program. Array lists, when you create them, they are size 0, right? And then as you add elements in using the add method, they grow. So now it's size 1, then it's size 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So ArrayList can grow and shrink. And so yeah, I want to talk a little bit about ArrayLists, and this video is going to be a little long, so brace yourself. So first of all, let's go ahead and print everything out in the ArrayList, and we're going to do that by running a regular for loop, right? And one thing to note here is I is going to equal 0 while I is less than, and here if it was an array we would say length, right? Notice there are no parentheses here. There are no parentheses here because length is an instance variable of the array object, right? So this instance variable is never going to change over the course of the object's life, right? But with an array list, we run a method called size, right? Why? Because that method called size has a for loop that scrolls through the array, and it counts how many elements it has, because the array list can grow and shrink dynamically, right? So you need to have code that's going to be able to tell how big it is, whether it's size 1, size 2, or size 100. And so that's what that's doing, right? So it's going to run this, it's going to calculate it to be size 5, and then while I is 0 is less than 5, we're going to print out this array list, and then we need, in order to get the element, we need to use get, right? Get I, and that will get the 0th element in the array list, print out Puerto, and then it's going to come back up. I is going to increment to 1, and while 1 is less than places, it's going to get places sub get I, right? So get 1, which is libidos. And so let's go ahead and run this, right click. So we print out everything in the array list. Okay, all right, well, great. So one thing I want to bring up is there's a problem that some people are having, and it's very critical to understand, because it's a problem that happens when you're trying to treat an array list like you treat an array. Now let's take a look at this for loop here. We're scrolling through the array list, and inside of the body of the for loop we're checking if that element in the array list contains the letter R, right? And if it does, we will remove it. So in our mind, what's going to be happening, it's going to evaluate Puerto, it's going to find it has an R, and it's going to remove it. It's going to evaluate libidos, no R, leave it. Mancora, remove it. Herradura, remove it. Cabo Blanco, leave it. So this print line right here, this for loop that's printing out all the elements, should print out libidos and Cabo, right? So let's go ahead and see if that's what it does. We'll compile, run. Libidos, Herradura, Cabo. It's not removing Herradura. Why? Right? So the reason why is because of this dot size. Okay, this is calculated every time we iterate through the for loop. So let's go ahead and run through it. I is equal to 0. 0 is less than 5. It's true. We enter into the body. We remove Puerto, right? So then we come back up. I is incremented to 1. And then we recalculate the size, which is now 4. Right? So 1 is less than 4. That's true. We come in. Libidos is good. This evaluates to false, and we don't remove it. Right? We come back up. I increments to 2, and then we recalculate size, and size is now, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4, right? So 2 is less than 4. That's true. So then we come in here and we get the second element, or the number 2 element in places, which is Mancora, and it does contain an R, so this is true, and we remove Mancora, right? So we come back to the bottom, we increment I to 3, and we recalculate the size. Now here the size is 3, right? Because we have libidos, we have Herradura, and we have Cabo. So 3 is not less than 3. The for loop breaks. Right? What does that leave? That leaves libidos, Herradura, Cabo. We get this strange behavior over here that's unwanted. Right? So that's the reason why it's doing that. And so there are ways around this, okay, and I'm going to talk about a couple of them. So the first way that we can get around it is we can do this instead. Okay. Notice there's no difference. The only difference is that we are decrementing the I variable if we're removing an element. We remove an element, we decrement the I variable, right? I don't think I need to talk too much about why this works. Let's go ahead and talk about Porto. I guess we can do that, right? First element, I is equal to 0, 0 is less than 5, it's true. We remove it, right? And then I is decremented to -1. We come back up, and then I++ we get I to be 0, right? Then 0 is less than places of size, which is 4 now, and that's true, and we evaluate this guy, right? We come in, it doesn't do anything, I is incremented to 1, and then we check this, 1 is less than 4, true, right? We remove Mankora, and then I is decremented to 0. Then we come back up, I is incremented to 1, and then we check this is true, even though places of size is 3. And then we remove the one element, which is Herradura, right? So this is one way to get the job done. What's another way to do it? Another way to do it is to use an iterator, okay? And so what is an iterator? Maybe I can extend it. Okay, what is an iterator? It is an object that is used to iterate through an array list. Okay, so how does this behave? We have this for loop. It creates this iterator of type string because it's going to contain elements of type string. We call that iterator it. It's going to equal places.iterator. So it's going to iterate through the places array list. And then every iteration through the for loop, it's going to check if the iterator has a next element. And this thing returns either true or false. So if this returns true, it's going to come in and do. It's going to come back up, and it's going to run this. And if it has another next that's true, we're going to come in and do it, right? So how does that work? Well, we create the iterator, check if it has next. It does, right? It has Porto. And then we come in, and then it.next gets that next element, right? This one checks if it has the next element. This one gets that next element. So this gets Porto, returns Porto, the string. We save it in value. And then we check, does places.getI contain an R? Ooh, I think we want to go ahead and remove this, and we can say value. All right, I'm sorry, this was poorly coded. So Porto is in the variable value, and then we're checking if value contains R, and if it does contain R, then we're going to remove that element from the iterator, right? So that's going to remove Porto, and then when it comes back up, it's going to check if it has a next, and it does. It has libidos, right? And then it's going to come in here, and it's going to get that next, put libidos in value. This is not true. It's not going to remove libidos, and so on and so on. So this is another way that we can adjust an array list, remove elements in an array list inside of a loop. And then we have this last method of doing it. We have a while loop. Oh, but for this we need to have the iterator. What was the... Okay, so there we go. Let's call the iterator it. We're going to just say iterator. And then this here is going to be places. And this is going to be lowercase iterator. Yeah, I think we're good here. Yeah, so iterator. Okay, so with the iterator you need to declare what type it's going to contain, so we need to say string here, and we say, so what are we doing? We're in the for loop that we just talked about. We're creating the iterator in the parentheses of the for loop, right? Like have a temporary iterator just for the for loop. Here we're declaring the for loop in the body of the function. We call the iterator iter. It's going to contain string type objects. It's going to iterate through the array list places. All right, we're down here in the while loop, it's checking has next, right? If it does have next, it's going to get that next, save it in this variable p, and if p contains r, we're going to remove. So this is the same algorithm that we just saw, except instead of using a for loop, we're using a while loop. And We can compile, we can run it. Null, let's see, iterator.next. Yeah, I'm not sure. This was working just right before I set up this video. But yeah, you can use any of the other methods, I guess. And this method does work. I just must have left something out. But yeah, that's about it. Maybe I could just like verify that the for loop method works, and then we can call this video done. So we'll save that. We'll right click. We'll run it, and we get libidos and Cabo, right? And that's right, because R, and R, leaving libidos and Cabo.